Sure, but we want to welcome you this evening to our learning session one. Had a great kickoff. Really enjoyed Dr. Silver being here and Rick along with him. And I kind of feel like that we learned so much that by the end of the meeting that we maybe shared enough just to make you a little nervous. And so today is about trying to regroup, uh, get down to more detail, a lot of logistics. So that's something I'll be sharing at the end of the meeting and then possibly throughout as far as logistics, upcoming deadlines and things for you to do. And I think you'll walk away feeling like there is a little more um, detail that you can follow and it not feel quite as overwhelming. And so we're really pleased about that. But Rick, without any further ado, I'm going to let you get started and then we'll just start hopping in as we need to. The participant resources, I'll also put that link in the chat here once Rick gets started. And then we'll also try to keep adding links in the chat as we go. Rick?
Thank you, Johnny. Good afternoon, everybody. Carrie Cornett in Floyd County. Carrie, can you hear me? I'm admiring your wall behind you there. It looks like you're in a classroom. Is that real brick or is it faux brick?
It's not, it's fake.
It's fake. I also noticed a periodic table of elements, which also caught my eye.
Yep, I'm a chemistry teacher.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Science teacher. That's it. Fantastic. Well, that's a great background you have there, Carrie. That caught my eye. Well, I think Johnny said we gave you enough information a month ago to maybe scare you off, but I don't think we run them all off, Johnny. Most of them came back, so
yes, they did, and I've not had one email saying that they quit on us. So
good.
Yeah, they're this is a tenacious bunch.
They are a fantastic group. They really are. Well, I know some of you might even be on fall break. I know that sort of across the state of Kentucky is within a 3-week ban there that districts are taking their time, and so some of you may be even on your spring break or and boy, what commitment to join on your well, it's not spring yet, is it? Right, it's fall break. I'm trying to get to the warmer weather, and we haven't really started the cold yet. But fall break, and others of you who've been on fall break and you're back, and man, you're fresh, and that lasted until the end of Monday, and then the freshness feels gone, or at least it used to me. Well, we're going to come back to our idea of action research in action. And the subtitle of our training time today is Digging Deeper. We're going to dig a little deeper. And what does that mean? Well, to sort of talk about some of, there's a lot of information that we threw at you in the hours that we were together a month ago. And so we want to come back and review some key concepts. We're going to reinforce some critical steps. So we're here to help you, and I want you to really feel I'm an informal kind of guy. And so holler and ask a question and raise your hand, and whatever you want to do there in the chat to if you have a question, let's try to address it. And while I'm thinking about that, we're Johnny's sending you out some things on these open office hours in the month of November, and so you can sign up for a one-on-one, or you got a couple of you want in the district want to do it as a group. Totally up to you, but the time there to sign up to just for us to talk one-on-one or one on a group you pick to really talk about your work and what do you need, what questions do you have, how's it going. This is a big project, and we ultimately just want to make sure that you feel good about it, that it means something to you when you get finished. You didn't feel like you just well, there's a lot of work I did for that, and I'm not sure it helped me. We don't want that feeling. And so we're going to be reinforcing those critical steps, and then we're ultimately going to work on refinement, maybe even some rehearsal of your action research plan. And so today will be about digging back into. There'll be some new things. There'll be some things coming again in a different format. And so that's kind of what our session will look like as we roll on through here today. But again, welcome. Hope you got a nice cold drink or coffee or tea or bottle of water, whatever you got, and you're comfortable. And so let's get this training on the road.
Hey, Rick, something I'll just share real quick since you mentioned the scheduling consultation time is in the participant folder. You'll just see a Word file that when you open it, file its name, schedule time with Rick, and you'll see a Zoom link that will take you to a Zoom scheduler to be able to pick out a time to do that. And so that'll show up on our calendars and we'll be able to manage meeting with you and also give you the Zoom meeting for that, the Zoom meeting link. But we look forward to that as well. But that's in your participant folder.
Perfect. Please check that out, and love to just sit with you and talk about your project. Today is going to be interactive as well, even though we're all sitting in different places in the state of Kentucky. But I want to really get some feedback from you. I want to get some how you feeling, right? How's this going? We always want to think about how do we, deal with the emotions, the introductions of a lesson, of a project, or whatever. So I want you to, we'll look at your first impressions, right? What's your first impressions so far with action research? You've had a day of training, now you're back for the first of a support session. And just kind of want to know your first impression. First impressions are pretty huge. And sometimes they're hard to change once you have an impression made. So we want to really make sure that we're giving a good impression, but we want to know your first impression of the work. And so we'd love for you to, again, begin here. We want to hear your voices, get you talking and thinking about things as we go along. And we'd love for you can share verbally, throw some things in the chat box. But just think about your journey so far, and maybe it was the one day. Maybe it was the one day, and you thought about it for a day or two. But either way, your first impressions, kind of at first I thought about action research, but now maybe I'm thinking, and so ponder that a minute. How you feeling about that? At first I thought about action research, and now I think. And maybe you're still at first I thought. Maybe you're still at first impression. You haven't moved beyond that. So we'd love to hear a little bit of feedback.
I'll just tell you the truth. I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay. Thank you, Joanne. That's okay. You appreciate telling us right away. Not sure what
When I left that meeting, I'm like, I have no idea what he was talking about.
Okay.
I was overwhelmed.
Hey, appreciate that. And so hopefully by the end of the day, it starts to make a little more sense to you. We'll dig into a piece or two and try to go back through that. So you let me know, Joanne, if I'm helping clear some of that up. How many of you are like, hey, I'm kind of like Joanne. I'm a little overwhelmed or not sure what I'm supposed to do after that.
And Rick, and Joanne too, thank you for sharing that, because that kind of candidness is what we need. Because I imagine that you probably did feel that way, because there's more to do. There's more to learn. And then we've got Ashley with Perry County says, at first I thought action research was going to be daunting, but now I'm thinking this is an opportunity for me to take an innovative approach to a problem of practice. And certainly that's true as well. We've got another, I feel excited to do something that could have great impact in my district. But also I'm like Joanne in some ways on how to start. I like the I like that action research will help us see a problem and find a solution in our schools. Certainly as teachers, we're all about the solutions, aren't we? And then at first I thought it was going to be impossible, but with examples and guidance that has been provided, I now think it will take time. But with not be impossibly difficult, I feel like these are things we are already doing, but now it will be on paper and intentional. And so that's what we want you to feel and hope so. I'm a little overwhelmed. That's another one overwhelmed. At first I thought the action research would be overwhelming. Now I think I will take what I have learned, but now record my findings. And it's continuing to go kind of in a similar way, Rick. several are adding comments. Some of like, I have no idea what to do. So you've got purpose today.
One I see here from Megan says she's having a hard time coming up with a problem of practice that she could easily gather concrete data on. So here's that.
Good. So yeah, that's good, and we're going to work on those things today, and we're going to have these follow-up coaching sessions. So we want you to feel like, okay, so maybe I'm feeling like Joanne is, and several of you indicated, hey, I'm a little bit not sure about what I'm supposed to do, and the main thing is that you feel also that, okay, so I don't know it yet, but through the course of the process and the support, they'll help me figure this out, and that'll be our goal. We'll make that happen one way or another to support you through this. I think you'll be happy with the process at the end, and so appreciate that. And so really the next question, we're going to do some polling today. And so that was kind of how you feeling about it, right? So I want to think about in some polls. We've got 3 or 4 polls we're going to use here this afternoon, just to again give me feedback and the cooperative feedback on where are we in the whole process in terms of moving it down the road, right? And so I wanted to also want to highlight a little bit of piece of Kentucky history here. This is engine 152. That's stationed or has been stationed in New Haven, Kentucky. It's the Louisville-Nashville 152, and it's one of the few engines of its kind left in the world. And I think it's been pulling trains up there, but it's now being refurbished, and so maybe it's at some of the location being refurbished. But we're thinking about, where are we on the journey? Are we at the station but not yet on board? So it's we're calling for all aboard. Where are you on the station? Are you getting started? I'm building a little steam. I've thought about it a little bit, but I haven't moved very far down it. Or I'm rolling down the tracks. I've got it going, but certainly it's not finished. I'm somewhere out there working on it. And then I'm getting pretty close. I got a good idea what my things are happening, and then there might be 1 or 2 people who say, hey, I got it figured out already. I'm done. So let's see where we are in our poll.
Just a few more people waiting for a response, Rick, and we'll have that data ready for you.
Okay.
Looking good, Rick. Quite a few building steam. Of course, we have all aboard. Several rolling down the tracks, and we've even got a few. I think one that says I'm almost there. So
yeah.
Okay, almost everyone. Oh, here's a few more. I was going to just share it. Oh, here comes the last few. Okay, I'm going to share what we have. It's just a few people that we're missing, but this gives you a good consensus of where everyone's at. Can you see it?
I can see it. Johnny, can you see it okay?
yeah, I can see it. Let's see, can participants see?
Can everyone see it?
Yes.
Yes, they're saying yes.
Great. Thank you, Whitney.
Thank you, Whitney. Yeah, so it looks like most of us are, thinking about it, moving some things forward. That's good. That's good. We're on our way, and someone almost finished. So got some clarity about it and got going with it. So great. Well, thank you so much. I mean, really, for giving us your opinion about that. We want to kind of know where we are, and as we move along, we got a few more of these we'll do along the way. So let's dive into some things here a little bit. I want to do a little bit of what we often call the trip down memory lane, right? Let's go back and think about some of the things that we talked about when Harvey and I were with you there at the cooperative, and you'll remember some of these things. And so let's see if we can jog your memory a little bit. One of the first things we talked about was action research. Do you remember your definition? You wrote a definition that day. Maybe you've got that written down in the notes that are in front of you. What was your definition of action research? We really wanted to make that a personal thing. I pulled this slide because I wanted, it was my favorite of the group because I think it captures the essence of the idea of, what is action research? It's really a framework, a series of steps that you can go through to get a better understanding of the why, the when, and the how students become better learners. Man, that's the name of the game for us, right? How do we get students to be better learners, to remember information, remember it longer? That's the thing. So action research helps us get an understanding of why, when, and how students become better learners. Love that. How many of you remember the 3 M's? One of the first slides we had back in the session, we talked about the 3 M's. Who remembers the 3 M's? We said that action research needed to be meaningful. In other words, you're choosing something that makes most sense to you, that it's connected to your classroom, your kids, your situation, your problems, right? That's kind of what you're trying to solve. You're trying to solve your problems. You're trying to figure out, why are my kids not learning this in a certain, what's happening? Why are they not performing at the way I think they should? These are the things you're looking for. It also had to be measurable. It's some way that, we have to be able to figure out, hey, okay, so how do we know if we improved it or not? So it has to be measurable. And then ultimately it has to be manageable. And that's the part we're trying to also reinforce, right? How do we manage this thing? And for you, it's about, how do I plan this thing out? How many people are going to be involved? How many classes am I going to use? All of these things are the things that create the manageability for it. So we want to also always keep in mind that no matter what you choose to do, that you make sure it meets the criteria of the 3 M's. Is it meaningful? Can I measure it? And is it something I can get done with all of my already present duties of teaching and coaching and duties and all those kind of things? Another question that we ask is, why would teachers want to conduct action research? What's the big idea? Why would we want to do that? And one of the first things we talked about is, I'm sure that, how many of you are familiar with some of the books on the left-hand side of the screen? My guess is a lot of you are very familiar with some of those things, probably read multiple of those things. Often these things are done in laboratory settings. They're gathered from pieces of data across time, and they put them into books. And one of the things that separates action research from reading about research, it was this slide, right? Because it actually is occurring in real time, and it's based on your kids, your questions, and your classroom life, right? And also your colleagues next door in the same department, whatever that is. So you got a collaborative project you're working on. We're solving problems of our class. And, if you're teaching, for example, like Carrie, right? You're a chemistry teacher. Chemistry books are complicated, right? And reading can be complicated in chemistry and science in any level. And that's a department issue. And so we might want to say, how do we get kids to comprehend text better? I mean, these are the real problems that we have in our classrooms. And then we introduced this idea, what are the benefits of action research? So, one, it improves in educational practice. You study in your own practice, you're examining your own strengths and weaknesses. It allows for personalized professional growth. Teachers, we're knowledge generators, right? And this gives us a chance to pose and test our own hypotheses about, why is this not happening? And I think That's a powerful thing when you think about it. And the number 3 is about teacher empowerment. It really encourages us to try some things out. You know, we get caught, man, I can remember being in the same boat. Is I've got all this content to teach and I've got to try to, you know, stick with what I've got to do. And ultimately, I got to make sure kids know this, because there is a test at the end of the year and we've got to do, you know, our kids have to be prepared for that. And oftentimes that gets in the way of our innovation, right? Because I'm afraid to take a risk and try something different, because if it doesn't work out, then the kids have lost the learning, and then we're further behind. I kind of like to think about it this way. I always wanted people to take risks. In fact, I would encourage teachers when I was coming in to do an observation, do something you haven't done before. Try something new. Take a risk. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. We're really about learning. It's all about learning. And if you can get the learning right, all the testing takes care of itself. And so, you know, give yourself permission to try something a little different and see what happens. And that's action research. It's a little bit more than just, you know, on a hunch, right? You've got a problem, you're trying to solve a problem. If you don't solve it with the move that you make, so what? You hadn't solved it before. So trying some things different, you know, might be just what the doctor ordered. And number 4 is that it builds collective efficacy. If we're doing this as a group with a partner, with a department, then we're able to look at how is our teaching affecting the learning, and that we have control over that. We can try this, see what happens, see how kids respond. So it really builds our collective efficacy, which from a leadership standpoint, we talk about this a lot with leadership, is that, you know, building our collective efficacy is the most important thing we can do as school leaders. And as coaches, you're a big part of building collective efficacy. You know, John Hattie says that it's the number 1 indicator on his list of a gazillion things. There are 150 or so. 1.57 effect size. So builds efficacy, empowers us as teachers, and helps us grow, because we're learning what, why, and how students learn better. And I think that's some pretty cool reasons to think about action research. We said that some common elements, right? Think about the elements that we looked at, and we're going to come back to another example this evening, but you'll maybe thinking about some of the examples that you saw before. And some of those things where it was personally meaningful, there's a tool and an idea that might help. You know, I'm on a t-shirt campaign for the Thoughtful Classroom. I've been trying to talk Harvey into this. We all need a t-shirt that says, got a problem? There's a tool for that. And because I really think that is very much true. I learned a long time ago that I didn't really need $50,000 worth of textbooks. All I needed was some text, some problem sets for mathematics, and some good tool books. And I can take all that. I got enough knowledge about teaching and learning, and as a professional teacher, just like you, that I can take those tools, those problems, those texts, and man, I can help kids learn at big levels, and I can control it all. So if you got a problem, there's a tool for that. That's my t-shirt campaign. The next is way to test the effectiveness of the tool or idea. So you got to have a way to do that. And this is part of the process we've been working on. And then analyzing results. And this is something we'll be talking about in the spring semester, is that, okay, I've run my test, Rick, now what? And we'll talk about that. You'll remember, and we'll dive back into that this evening, is that you have a suite. And in that suite is a lot of resources. And one of those resources is the planning form. And Johnny has put that also in the materials folder for tonight, so you can access that multiple ways. And he's added some demographic information on it, so we know, so when you're filling it out and turning it into him or to the co-op, then it's identifiable. But form stayed the same in terms of the the pieces, and we'll be reflecting upon these pieces tonight and trying to reestablish some of those. So you have the suite, and in the suite you have the planning form plus the tools and strategies that we're going to look at. And finally, you'll remember that we had some steps, right? There were some action research steps. We said there's a framework. So here's the framework. It's we only dealt with the first three because right now that's what we're doing. We're building our action research plan, step 1, 2, and 3. And then we will work on 4, 5, and 6 in the second semester. So only doing half of this at this point. So I'll pause after a little review of some key slides from our time together with Harvey, and ask, is there any questions, comments, or hey, snide remarks? Okay.
Rick, I've got in the chat for everyone the link to the research, action research planning form. And like Rick said, we'll come back to that a little later as well.
Perfect. Any questions in the chat box?
Nothing's coming up yet.
All right. Well, if it comes to mind, holler or send us a chat message. So what are we going to do in this session, Rick? What am I going to walk away with today? What are you going to try to help me figure out? Well, the first thing is some new learning is going to be what we call if-then thinking. And that will help us with our research design. We're going to spend a little time working. I mean, you're investing some time in this, and you have limited time, and so this is big. The focusing on the root cause of my problem, because if you choose the problem wrong, if you choose a problem and you match a tool to it, but it wasn't really the problem, it happens because of something else. There's a root cause. Finding the root cause and fixing that can make this more permanent as opposed to, well, maybe it was a Band-Aid fix. So root cause is important. We're going to spend a little time and let you have some time to think about that today. And then I want to start doing some tool highlights, right? What do we have in this suite? What are these tools about? And I'm going to hit a little bit of review, and we'll look at some of those just to, build your repertoire of, oh, okay, I know what's in there now. I understand that too. I kind of like that. I might use it for something else, not just action research. And then we want to think about these design questions and really consider those in terms of how do I get my plan set up. So that's kind of where we should be going by the end of our session today. I want to move to a tool that we call vocabulary knowledge rating. And this is also in your folder. And so if you want to go in your folder, you can check that out. It's a fillable form. And this is a great little tool to help build vocabulary. It introduces students to vocabulary. In this case, we're introducing vocabulary to you. And here are some of the words around, research that some of you are probably like, I 100% know those words. But there may be many of you who say, I've heard of them, but I do not know what they mean. And they're critical words for the process of action research. And so if you go into your materials folder and pull up your vocabulary knowledge rating, you can go through each one of these words and just, rate yourself. Yeah, I've never heard of it. Or all the way up through, I can explain this term in my own words, give an example, and use it in conversation. I know it. I own this word. And so we're going to take about 3 or 4 minutes and let you go in and do your vocabulary knowledge rating and decide which of these levels you think you are with each one of these words.
Mary Dotson said she actually used this tool last week with her vocabulary words.
Mary said that? That's great, Mary.
Yeah, my action plan, I want to do something with vocabulary. So I used this last week. Let me turn on my video, sorry. Used this last week with my new vocabulary words.
Fantastic.
Our curriculum does it. Our curriculum uses the same words for 2 weeks. So I gave them to the beginning. I'm anxious to see, I'm going to re-give it, at the end of the week to kind of see the difference.
You're doing a little action research already, right? You're going to see how.
Well, I want to test the waters.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that. Way to go.
That's a great idea, Taylor. She says that she's thinking about using this and incorporating it into her kindergarten classes.
And we were greatly impacted by a flood a little over a year ago. And you all were in our area and were very instrumental in helping clean up. And in fact, you all actually, my mom's house got destroyed.
Sorry about that. I think he accidentally got unmuted. So Taylor was gracious enough to share, and she said that she had a thought about using it in your kindergarten classes and incorporating emoji faces instead so that they could relate to the rating system. That's a wonderful idea.
Love that, Taylor. Absolutely. Well, that is a great example of how thoughtful classroom tools work in any level. All right. You can take vocabulary knowledge rating and use it in kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. And that's a great example. So I'm thinking I hope I'm giving you, it's the hardest part about being online is you can't really tell if everybody's finished, but vocabulary knowledge rating, right? It's a way for us to be thinking about, we'll address some of these words today. You're going to need some of these words when it comes to your defense, right? You've got to explain, here's my project, here's what I'll be doing. And then at the end, in December, you're going to video yourself and make a presentation about your work. And then at the end, you got to do it all. So these words will help you in terms of your description of those things. So it's important to kind of get a good feel for each of these words. And so we'll come back to this, in our other sessions and let you kind of come back and say, hey, kind of where am I now? Am I moving up the line on my vocabulary? Fantastic. And thank you for the many of you who gave us the information in chat and shared some things verbally as well. So we like to, in the Thoughtful Classroom, layer as much thinking as we can. And we certainly like to practice what we preach about. And you'll recall from our spring sessions back in February that we talked about the 5 episodes for instruction and what a beautiful model around the science of learning that is. And I wanted to sort of bring that layer back into our training this afternoon, our session, just bring that back and talk about it in those ways. And the first step was preparing students for new learning. And if you can remember back to that far, one of the great things about this is that you can think about it in really burst, right? So preparing students for new learning is the 3 A's. So think about what we've done so far in the first half hour of our session around preparing for the new learning, right? Did we build any anticipation of learning? For example, how did I help build anticipation for learning? We talked forward, right, about we're coming up, we're going to do this. The title slide, sort of, here's what we're going to do today. The learning targets were very specific. Here's what we're going to be going after during this session. So that's 1A, anticipate learning. So when you're coaching teachers, you're thinking about, I'm looking for 3 A's if I'm at the beginning of a lesson. How did you build anticipation? What is this going to be about? What are we going to be doing? What's the thing today? Right? Accessing background knowledge, tapping back into the things you've already learned, the things that you know. Where do we do that in this first half hour? We tapped into your emotional self, how you feeling. We tapped into where are you? And we talked about the bulletin board, right? What's on the bulletin board, the slides that we've brought up before. And the third A is capturing attention. How do we capture attention here and get you thinking about that? And in my design, in my mind, it was how we start out with what's your first impression, right? So here's my impression of this right now so far. That's you were passionate about that. And Joanne said, man, I don't know. somebody else said, I don't know either. And someone else said, hey, I'm almost finished. So these are ways to sort of, capture your attention about what's going on. Foreshadowing. Here's some stuff coming up. Ways we capture attention. So, and I'll use that as we go through today and think about the episodes of learning that we are working with as we go along. So remember the 3 A's, preparing students for new learning. Let's move into presenting new learning, because the next few slides are new learning. Okay, so this is something we didn't share with you at all in the first session, but it's a critical ingredient to your successful project here. So let's take a look at some of the things to think about in new learning, right? We call this the 3 C's. You had the 3 A's, this is the 3 C's. You might remember these. Anybody remember the 3 C's? What do you think the first one is? Presenting new learning. It's around collecting information. We have to think about how are we going to have kids collect information. And so for us in this project, how are we collecting information? We have the forms, right? We have those forms that walk you through. It's how you can collect your thinking and work your plan together. So that's how we're choosing to do that. As you're teaching, as you're coaching teachers, you want to be thinking about how are you having kids collect information? Maybe using window notes, math notes, those kinds of tools. The other C is connecting the learning. How do we connect the learning to what you already know? The brain naturally starts looking for what it already knows. And so if you can give it a little bit of that, you can really increase engagement for learners. It's being able to connect to what I know. And you can do that in multiple episodes, but you certainly do that as part of presenting new learning. And the third C, you guessed it, is about building the comprehension, about building the knowledge. How do we get solid knowledge about what we need to know and be able to do with it? All right, so here comes some new learning. I'm going to give you a series of pictures, and let's think about what these things have in common. How many of you watch the Food Network shows? Maybe you're a big fan of Hell's Kitchen, right? You got Gordon Ramsay and all the tirades. And if you watch that show on preparing meals, 5-star Michelin type meals, I suppose. Maybe you like to watch home improvement shows. I personally like those. Fashion design, right? Fashion. Our youngest son is getting his PhD in engineering out at North Carolina State. And one of the things he's working on is, aircraft engines and how to make those more efficient and faster across the land. So, and the last one is, one of our favorite things, right? Kids at work in classroom. So what all these pictures have in common? It's something they have in common.
Rick, we're starting to get some comments too, exactly the same, but from 2 different people, is it's all about design.
It's all about design. Yes. Thank you very much. These things are about design. And as we got the young kids here doing a science experiment, was a design from a teacher, right? And so design is very much a part of what we do every day. And our research project is really, our action research project is about research design. And that's what we're focusing on. And I wanted to bring you back to another slide from several months ago, because boy, this is true, whether we're building a lesson or we're planning a research project. And you'll recall this, right? The geodesic dome. And Buckminster Fuller, and the young architect who came to Buckminster and said, what do what I need to know about this? And he said, there's 4 questions you have to ask yourself, right? On any design. This is true of your lesson design, of the designs of the pictures, food design, fashion design, doesn't really matter. 4 things you need to consider in your project, right? And one is it purposeful? These connect back to our 3 M's, right? Is it purposeful? Is it serving a good purpose for your students? Is it functional? If you figure this out, is it going to do what you ask it to do? So when you create a research project, is it functional? When you use it, will it give you the data you're looking for? So knowing it, is it purposeful? Is it functional? These are important parts of your action research project. Will people like it? I mean, hopefully we're building collective efficacy here. And so when you design your action research and you share your action research and the cooperative puts those things up on the site, man, we want to help you make these things very compelling. And in fact, at our next session in November, one of the things I'll spend some time on is, how do I present this thing? I got this stuff figured out in these boxes now, but how do I present this thing? How do I present it in a way that captures people's attention? Because if we can do that, then other people will look at it and go, wow, that's a great, I got that same problem and I can use what they figured out and in my own classroom. And so you want it to be something that people look at and go, hey, that's pretty good. And then Buckminster said it has to be beautiful, right? And beautiful in design. And I think design is always kind of beautiful. If you think about food or fashion or house design, you think about how does it look? Presentation is important. So is your action research presentation, is it something that's pleasing to listen to look at, your slides, whatever you're doing with that? So keep those 4 things in mind. Is it purposeful, functional? Will people like this thing? And is it beautiful? Beautiful. A key element to action research is what we call if-then thinking. And it's really at the heart of inquiry and experimental design. So let's think about if-then thinking. What does that mean? It's one of our vocabulary words too. It's one of our VKR. So if-then thinking is a way that we can test our ideas. And this is a tool that really, you can use this in the classroom, right? It helps kids think like scientists, it invites them to generate a hypothesis, make a prediction, and then use if-then thinking to test their ideas. So let's look at some examples of this. What would if-then thinking look like? So the first thing we'd say about if-then thinking is that if-then thinking is conditional. For example, if X is true, then Y must be true, right? So it's conditional. So if this is this, then that must be that. X equals Y. It's also conditional. If X happens, then Y will occur. If X happens, then Y will occur. Let's look at the 2 examples. If this is true, then that's true. If this happens, then that will happen. You see the pattern? If-then thinking is conditional. And that's what we call cause and effect. Cause and effect. You have a cause, it produces an effect. Action research is about cause and effect. Okay? If we do this, if we use this tool, then based on the research, based on what we figured out, then we think this will be what happens. That's the if-then. If we do this, then this should occur. And then that takes us into the next part of the project, right? Once you figured out, here's my problem, if I put this cause in, I'll get this effect. And then the next part of it is, did it work? Did I get the effect I expected to get? So that's just part of the process, but that's down the road. Don't worry about that one yet. Cause and effect. For example, if it rains tonight, then tomorrow we would expect the sidewalks and the roads are going to be wet. In our part of the world, sometimes, right, if it's going to be a skiff of snow, if there's a skiff of snow tonight, then tomorrow we may be out of school. So it's conditional thinking. If this happens, then this is likely the case. Another kind of if-then relationship is when you want to test the if. What if I want to test the if? If it's true that X happens, then if I test my idea like this, I predict Y will occur. So if it's true that this happens, then if I test my idea like this will occur. Here's an example. Here's a science example. If it's true that garlic has antibacterial properties, if that's true, then I predict that adding crushed garlic to bacteria on a petri dish would lead to less bacterial growth. So do you see that example, right? If it's true. Now, I've read that, I've heard that, I'm going to give this a try. Be the same for our research project, right? I read some research that said if I do this or that, it should improve student learning. Okay, then if I use this tool, get at that thing, then I would expect this would happen. So it's given us a good way to think about in a logical manner the purposes of our project. Here's another example. Here's a real world example, school example. If it's true that cramming leads to poor test performance, and we often say cramming leads to fast learning, but also leads to fast forgetting. So if it's true that cramming leads to poor test performance, then I would predict that studying daily instead of the night before is going to lead to better scores on future tests. And we could pull that information, that idea, right, from a lot of research, a lot of brain-based research that says spaced practice. We even talk about this in some of our trainings, right? Spaced practice over mass practice. You have to come back to things if you want kids to remember it. And the studies show that I can study 10 minutes a day for a week, and I'll perform better on the test than if I studied 3 hours the night before. And so, but anyway, I'm just adding some of the real science to our example here. So anytime we have an idea or something that we want to test, and then we want to think about, well, here's what I think is going to happen, then that's what we call the hypothesis, right? It's a hypothesis. And so our hypothesis is, in this example, is that cramming is not an effective study method. That's our hypothesis. We don't think it is because we know some stuff about this. And so I'm thinking, well, if this is true, then cramming isn't going to be helpful for learning. So what would that look like in a scientific situation? So we have two things here. The first thing we have is the independent variable, okay? And independent variable is what we're going to manipulate. In this example, we're going to test cramming versus spacing out learning, right? So we're going to manipulate the amount of studying time that a student does in this example. That's what we call the independent variable. It's the independent thing we're testing. There are multiple variables that could cause grades to go up or down, right? But we're testing amount of studying. So that becomes our independent variable because that's what we're choosing to study. We're going to isolate that variable. What we measure, in other words, the test performance, is the dependent variable. And we call that the dependent variable because it's dependent upon, in this case, the amount of studying we do, right? Whether we do more or less spread out over time versus cramming. Independent, dependent variable. Let me pause there. If I don't want to lose the entire group.
Rick, no questions yet on chat.
Questions yet? I'm gonna just walk through it one more time. So this is if we're testing the if, right? If it's true that cramming leads to poor performance, then studying a little each night would lead to better grades. So what does that look like in terms of scientific process, right? So we have a hypothesis. The cramming is not a good idea. That's, you could even turn that around, right? Spaced out over time is a better idea. And so we're going to manipulate the independent variable, the variable that we're going to deal with. In this case, the amount of studying. We could have chosen time, you know, where you study at home. You know, there's a lot of things you could do in variables, right? But this variable is about the amount of study. And we're going to measure that performance with whatever way we do that in our projects. But that's the dependent variable. Here's another example. If it's true that dual coding, using both words and images to process information, improves retention. So if it's true that dual coding improves retention, then I predict that if we help kids visualize and explain academic vocabulary terms, then we're going to improve understanding of key concepts. In your materials, there was an example, a model of action research that we did not use last time. We did not use intentionally. We pulled 3 examples, I think, out, and we used in our training on site. And we saved one, and I want us to think about that particular piece. And so, excuse me. One other thing here, I wanted to just share an example of that, right? So if then thinking is a pretty powerful way to think about things, not only for your research project, but in general. And in my time as assistant superintendent here at home, I created some if-then goals, right, for our district. And these were the if-then statements that really sort of help define the kinds of things that I would really spend my energy working on during my time working in district around that work. And so you get an idea of how that might look at a broad level, right? So we would have specific things. We're always looking for this information, right? If we do this, then this should happen, right? If we do these things, then this would happen. And we're always looking for, is this happening? And so we were constantly measuring these things. Do we see the shifts taking place? So that's just if then used in another real world situation that I had some experience with back in the day. But now, so the model I wanted you to go back at and look at again was the Speak Up STEMs one, and we put that in your participant folder. So I'm going to pause for 3 or 4 minutes and let you read through that model again, just to conjure up the thinking in your own mind, build some connections. Remember, we're presenting new learning, so we're building connections. And this will be a way to do that. So take a minute and look through this particular model on Speak Up STEMs, or you can read it off the screen if your screen's big enough.
Rick, we've got, if I implement this tool, then the students will respond. And they're starting to come in quickly. If I provide Speak Up STEMs, participation will increase. If I use Speak Up STEMs in my classrooms, more students will participate. If it's true that not really knowing what to say is the limiting factor for participation, then I'd expect to see my quieter students participating more frequently and productively after using the tool than before. Greater participation. If not knowing what to say is limiting participation, then providing Speak Up STEMs will increase participation. They don't know what to say, I can implement participation techniques. These are all great. If students talk about what they're learning, then they learn the content more deeply. So if they talk about their learning, then they learn the content more deeply. If I provide students a prompt for participation, then participation will increase. If I implement a new strategy, speak up stems to scaffold questions, then will I get more participation with my lower level students? If I use speak up stems, then students will participate.
Great. Thank you so much for everybody that's typing in the chat boxes. Thank you so much. So let's think about the if then. Another and so many good examples that you just read off, Johnny. Notice that in the first paragraph, we offer some research, right? It says, since research says that students who actively think and talk about what they're learning actually learn the content more deeply. So, there's a piece of research. So if it's true, see, we can go back to that stem. If it's true that students who actively think and talk about what they're learning actually learn the content more deeply, then using the tool Speak Up Stems should improve participation and also the learning of students in my class. And so, and that's no better than the ones that you gave me. It was just one that I wanted to also share because it really tied into that research, right? And I didn't, you might have read one like that off the research, but I didn't hear that. But so simple, right? So simple to think about it in that terms. If this is the truth, then I can try it. And so if you have the research, you can use that. You can also just say, hey, I've got this problem. So this is my problem. And this is what I think is going to fix it, right? So if I use this tool, then students will be better at, Y, X, Y. Questions about that in any way before we move on?
Rick, another comment that came in was if they know how to participate, then my lesson can be more student facilitated and have that deeper understanding.
Yeah, that's a result, right? That's a result. If kids participate more, then my classroom becomes a much more dynamic place. Kids are talking, responding, it's more dynamic. Yeah, that's okay. We'll keep practicing on it, and but boy, we're moving along. The last thing I wanted to say about this whole idea of if then thinking and action research, and we're pretty passionate about this in the thoughtful classroom. It's really kind of who we are, right? It's about getting kids to think, and it's about giving the power to the teacher. Because teaching is about decision making. I'm wondering if you have thought about how many instructional decisions you make each day. Someone might say a gazillion. You're right about that, right? It's a bunch, right? You make a bunch, but this has actually been tested, and there's some research been done on this, and the research says that on average, teachers make about 1,500 instructional decisions a day. And here's what's cool. See, we're in a profession, and we've got to make sure we tell people we're in a profession. No other profession can say they make that many decisions in a day's time. We are the profession that makes the most decisions in a day's time. And now our oldest son is a physician. He likes to argue this point with me. No, Dad, no, the teacher's not gonna make more decisions than the doctor does. Well, read the research. And so we have this argument from time to time. But no doubt, teachers make a lot of decisions. And the great thing about action research, this is really the goal, I think, for the cooperative, and certainly something that we hope for, is that this becomes kind of a way of thinking about teaching for us, and it goes way beyond just this project. That you see, wow, I really have power, right? It's not scripted so much. See, textbook companies don't believe in the power of the teacher. They believe in giving you a scripted plan. Do what I tell you. If you don't do what I tell you, you're not going to get good results. And so it puts us in a bad spot as teachers. But the reality is, as I said before, all we need is some text, some problem sets, and some tools to help drive the learning. And man, we're rocking and rolling because teachers are professional people. And, you know, I was reading a study back earlier in the summer and about teachers' perceptions. You know, we're talking about first impressions. Their perceptions now of teaching was not very good. And the number one reason teachers are frustrated with teaching is the loss of autonomy, that I'm having to follow a script. It's always, you know, it's those things. Man, we promote the idea of design your own, build your own, design your own, and do it yourself. Man, you'll find yourself empowered, excited, engaged even in the process. And so action research sort of helps in all those areas, right? And so we want you to think about this way beyond just for this project and the end of the year. We want you to think about this way from now on, because it's fun to think about teaching and learning in this way, and incredibly powerful for student learning. So I want to move into another phase and back to our 5 episodes of learning. So we've talked about presenting new learning and preparing for new learning. And so the next phase is going to be some deepening and reinforcing of learning. So what's coming up is going to be digging a little deeper on things we've already thought about some before. So I just want to tell you kind of what that looks about. But I also want to take a minute because you're coaches and you're working with teachers, and that is, you know, deepening and reinforcing. Man, this is where it happens, right? This is where learning either flies out of the brain and is gone, or it sticks, right? And so if we want kids to learn more and remember it longer, it's during this deepening and reinforcing time that it takes place. And the big principle of deepening, this is the research principle, is what we call RVD. Who remembers from our other sessions RVD? Somebody out there in the 72 of us that's got at least the first or second word. Shoot it at us.
Rick, we've got, they've actually got it for all of them. You want me to share all 3?
Do it. Yes.
Repetition, variation, depth of thought.
Yes. All right, man. That's fantastic. Yes. Repetition, variation, and depth of thought. So when you're coaching a teacher and you're thinking about, okay, you've presented new learning, what are you going to do now to help it really move it into long-term memory? You're going to say, what are you going to do for RVD, right? This is the learning principle. I've got to do some repetition. We're just talking about cramming doesn't work, studying over time, looping stuff works. You want kids to remember it, you got to come back to it. So there's got to be some repetition. There has to be some variation. We do it slightly different. We do it in a different way. And you always have to be thinking. As Daniel Willingham says, if you can't learn, you can't remember what you don't think about. And I love that quote. You can't remember what you don't think about. So we're going to be practicing RVD over this next series of slides. And then we'll take a break here in just a few minutes too, because I know we've been going for about an hour and some change. In fact, let's do that now. If you need a 5-minute break to make a quick pit stop or to freshen up your cold drink or coffee or whatever, do that real quick, and then we'll get into back to our forms and thinking about this plan. So we'll sign off here for about 5 minutes. I got 4:01, so we'll come back at, say 4:06. Well, it's 5:06 for you. All right, welcome back. Welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us. Wow, we got another 45, 50 minutes or so here to dive into these action research steps. And I want you to think about those first 3 steps in your mind. Think about action research steps 1. What was number 1? Figure out my problem, right? What's my problem or my challenge? That was number 1. What about number 2? What was step number 2? Once we've got a problem, then we're going to try to solve the problem. And that involves a tool. Remember, my campaign, if you got a problem, there's a tool for that. Oftentimes, there's more than one tool for that. And step 3, to plan your study. So we're going to really focus on thinking about these 3 pieces and digging a little deeper into them. And as I promised, a little bit of time to process some of this. I know sometimes it's hard to have time to do that. So we'll use some of our work together to do some guided thinking about that. So let's dive into step 1 again, identifying a problem or a challenge. So we have a poll, okay? So I kind of want to know in the steps, right? Step number 1 is getting a problem. So I'd like to know where you are in identifying your problem. You don't have a problem. You've got some ideas, but you haven't settled on it. I think I've got it, or I've got it between 1 or 2, or hey, I figured this out. I've got my problem identified. Thank you. The polls are rolling.
Yeah, we've always got problems, don't we, Rick?
Hard times come again no more.
Rick, as these continue to come in, one interesting thing I'm noticing is, in terms of the whole process, I would say that it was skewed a little more towards the all aboard and building steam. But with identifying problems, it's probably skewed a little more towards reaching the station. But again, building steam tends to be our highest number.
Yeah, but very true, right? We got more results to the right-hand side of our scale than we had on the first poll. So yeah, so our feeling is that we're not sure, but actionable, at least for the step number 1. We've got a lot of folks who are got an idea here. Looks like now it's about 50-50.
Rick, those are the results. Does everyone see them?
Yes.
Okay.
So it looks like if everybody can see that now, it's like it's about 50-50. Actually, it is 50, basically 50-50. So half of us have some idea or really still considering the idea of a problem. And then the other half somewhere on the continuum of, hey, I've got my problem, or I've kind of got this narrowed down. I've got some ideas and things like that. So our goal here in these next few minutes will be to help you either, oh, okay, I've got, you giving me some ideas about a problem, or you help me sort of figure out what my problem is going to be. So let's take a look at some things. Recall that when we were together last, we had the young woman and she was thinking about her problems, right? This was our example or model we were walking through. And there are many problems. There is no one problem, right? It's because it's really about, what do you see in your kids that you'd really like to work on? Well, if I could really work on this thing, it'd make a difference in kids' learning. That's what we're going after, right? That's the 3 M's, right? Meaningful. And in our example, the teacher chose that students don't retain key ideas from assigned text. So we're narrowing down our problem here, and ultimately, your problem. So I'd like for you to, if you don't yet have a problem, you think, I haven't decided on this yet. I'm in the first half of the continuum there. I'm at the all aboard or building steam, that area. I want you to just, for the sake of us going through this evening, think about, okay, I'm going to pick a problem. Here's a problem I had today in my class. I've seen this constantly. And so pick that to work with here as we work our way through the next section or two. Because this is a critical ingredient, right? That you got an idea. So your problem. Those of you who have a problem, you're going to work with that. And we want to use a tool called the 5 whys to really think about the causes of your research problem. And remember back in our learning targets, we talked about root cause is very important because it helps you be more clear, more sure on the tool you choose, that you're really actually solving the problem and not just band-aiding something that ultimately won't solve your big problem. So one of the great things Harvey talked about at the last one was this Jefferson Memorial story, and man, it is so good. But I wanted you to look at it in detail. We talked about it in our training, but I want you to see it in words and see the power of this idea of the 5 whys. So we're going to spend a few minutes on drilling down on your problem and see if we can get to a root cause of it. So, you'll recall that the problem was that the Jefferson Memorial was, deteriorating. The facade was not in good shape. And so they hired some people to figure this out. Why is this going on? And so the first question was, why is the monument deteriorating? Answer: because harsh chemicals are being frequently used to clean the monument. They're having to clean it all the time. Why number 2? So why are harsh chemicals needed? To clean off the large number of bird droppings on the monument. Turns out birds all over the place and they're making a huge mess. And so parks people were having to constantly come in and clean the monument. So why, next question, why are there a large number of bird droppings on the monument? Answer: because there's a bunch of spiders and birds love spiders. So you see the question, here's the question, take the question and see if you can answer the because, right? You notice you got the question, the why is this happening? Because. Question why number 4, why is there a large population of spiders? Answer: there were lots of insects and the spiders eat the insects. So let's think about it. What's the 5th why? You got it. Why are there swarms of insects to the monument, around the monument at dusk? Answer: because the lighting of the monument attracts the insects. I love you when you can see the words on that. You can see 5 whys and how he walks through that. You really see how powerful that is to get to the solution, right? And so the solution turned out to be, okay, so we got to take the lighting and change when we turn the lights on the monument in the evening, and that prevents the insects from showing up early and stops everything else. So that's how you get to the root cause of a problem. So if you think about it, what happens if they never ask 5 whys? Pick any stopping point, right? You never really know how to get right to the root cause. And so you might be spending tons of money and really never solve the problem. And that's what I'm saying about really digging down on your problem to get to a root cause. We can make sure that what you choose to attack is going to really solve your problem ultimately. So I want to come back to our young woman here. Remember her problem that she chose is that students don't seem to retain these key ideas from assigned textbook readings. So let's think about this problem and a teacher's 5 causes, 5 whys. Okay, so let's just play through this scenario. This is another example. So why don't students retain key ideas from text? Because they get bogged down in details. The second why. So why do students get bogged down in details? Because they can't process all the information in the text. What's the third why? Yeah. Why can't they process all the information in the text? Because the text is very dense and students don't read it very closely. Do you see the pattern? So what's the fourth why? All right, so why do they fail to read it closely? Maybe it's because they're struggling to read. They cannot determine what's most important. That is a skill, being able to figure out what's most important in a text. And so why do they struggle with differentiating importance? Because they lack the skills of being able to summarize. Don't have the skill to be able to look at two paragraphs and say, okay, what's that really about? What's the big idea? What's most important? So the solution, use a single sentence summary to really work on that skill of breaking down text into the most important details. See, there's just another real life example, thinking about our teacher's problem here. So we're gonna let you think about your problem. And as I said before, if you don't have a problem, go with something for the sake of working your way through these 5 whys, and see if you can arrive at, if it helps you arrive at a root cause. So I'm going to pause for a few minutes and let you think about your problem and working through your 5 becauses, and see if you can find a root problem. And then we're going to hear some of your thinking around that. So we want you to share some of your thinking. All right, ready, set, go. So I'd like to hear some of your thinking. You might not have gotten through all 5 of your becauses, but I want to hear some of your thinking and share it with the group. I'm going to call on some people, and if you haven't worked through your 5 becauses, that's okay. Tell me your problem, your original problem, and what was your latest because. I mean, what are you drilling down to? Or maybe you maybe figured it out. So if you don't have your 5 becauses, that's okay. At least just tell us what you think right now is your problem of practice. So how about Loretta McKenzie? Loretta, can you hear us? All right, technical problems.
Rick, I
Mary
do have
Dotson,
one. Yeah, go
yeah, in
ahead.
the chat. Mary Dotson responded and said, my problem is lack of vocabulary knowledge because they do not have prior knowledge.
They don't have the background knowledge. All right. Thank you, Mary. Kim Clevenger. Kim, you share us your problem and a because.
Rick, while we're waiting on Kim, we had one that said, Miss Gilly said that was the same she had as Miss Dotson. And then Miss Watson from McGoffin is saying students struggle to support inferences and conclusions with text evidence.
Kim or Loretta, you get your technology going yet? Someone else would have one they'd like to share. Please do that while we're waiting.
From
There's
the,
a few
go
more
ahead,
in
Kim.
chat. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. There's a few more in chat, Rick. They're coming in. Let's see. We have
Jackie Johnson said, my problem is students not comprehending math word problems because of lack of vocabulary knowledge. Elijah says lack of motivation due to lack of support and drive at home. Heather, that is what I was thinking as well. She agrees with Veronica. Let's see, Azud Wright Jenkins. My problem is that students do not put in enough effort. I'm struggling with that, with the because of that. Hillary McCurrum, students struggle to answer at higher level thinking questions. Angela Back, her problem is reading comprehension because they don't understand the vocabulary. Megan Adams, I'm having trouble with students being able to apply content beyond basic procedural problems. And again, we have another vocabulary. Not understanding vocabulary seems to be a common theme here. Sarah Blackburn, students
I
have
think
trouble.
vocabulary for
Go
me.
ahead.
Go ahead, Taylor. What'd you say?
I'm so sorry. I said I chose vocabulary too because I feel like maybe our area, it's the lack of experiences that these kids get to endure, and they're just not used to the things that others, might be used to or have seen or know and have that background knowledge.
Yeah. Thank you, Taylor. Yeah, so thank you for the verbal responses and the many responses I see coming through the chat as well. And I was looking for, as I look at your problems and your becauses, right? I'm thinking about what tools would help you attack that problem. And boy, the majority of the ones I've seen, there is actually a tool in your suite that will help you address those problems. So that's really cool that we're going to be lined up with a lot of the things that you're concerned about. Now, if you happen to be in a spot where that just my problem doesn't, I got a problem I'm not finding a tool for. It's another place where those office hour coaching visits will be helpful, right? We can walk up, we can think about that. What could I use? What could I do to attack that problem? And maybe it's something in one of your toolbooks or something. But yeah, I'm just seeing most of the things coming through here. We have tools for that. The last question I would ask you about this 5 why process is how many of you now have a little bit more clear, how many changed your thinking after you took it through a few becauses? Did anybody have a situation where you said, I'm a little more clear now on what I need to be testing than I was when I started? Anybody have that change of mind? So Ashley wrote, students are not writing proficiently, especially on demand, because of a lack of interest in writing, motivation, and no wanting to elaborate on their reasoning. And so, why are students not interested? Why are they not motivated to write? And this might be a question, Ashley, you talk to students about, right? So, so what's up with writing? And kids might give you some insights on your next because. Well, it's because of this, and you get a common problem, and then you'll know, oh, okay, so we know how to solve this now, because there's a reason for that, right? It's not. We can't just assume it's because kids are lazy. That maybe there's another problem. But that's a good one to think about. Ashley, thank you for sharing it. Sarah, yeah, go ahead, John.
That's what I was going to share, is just the other comment that, I think this lets teachers slow down and think about classroom problems. What we attribute to lack of effort or apathy could be another more solvable problem. And, that's something I can relate to as I was thinking about this with you, with one that I came up with, that it made me narrow down and then think about what I can actually maybe do versus maybe just thinking this is overwhelming.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Sarah, for sharing that. That's very important. We have to, especially with those kind of motivation, engagement kind of things, but true of all of them, dig in a little deeper to find the root cause. Otherwise, we're just band-aiding a problem that really won't get fixed. It might just get covered over for the moment. But if we can get down to why is this the case, then that's the problem we wanna jump into.
Rick, actually a question here from Miss West. You might want to just review, but it says, is it too broad for your problem to be the percentage of students performing below proficiency or grade level in mathematics because lack of higher level thinking skills, lack of communication, not enough collaboration with peers, decreasing willingness to work together, not being highly engaged?
what you have there is several variables, right? You have multiple variables there. So I would encourage you to think about picking one of those variables and trying to focus on it. And sometimes what can happen is when you start focusing on one variable, it ends up helping some others too. But otherwise you got, and you could test all, 2 or 3 of those things you have there. But I think if you just pick a piece and say, I'm going to work on higher level thinking skills, or I'm going to work on how do I communicate, I'm going to work on collaboration. If we collaborate more, then kids are going to remember more, retain, if that's the route you tried to go. So I would try to probably I would narrow down the variables because you can test it easier that way. Otherwise, you won't know exactly what you fixed. But really good question. Yeah, I think some of those variables you could pick as your, a problem. Yeah. Yeah. My students are not learning mathematics because, I think that they're not collaborating with peers enough to really make meaning. And so that would be your problem. Yeah, it's good. Well, good. I think this was a good use of our time. It brought out some thinking and some good sharing about the thinking around that. So takeaway from here is ask yourself those 5 whys, and that may take you longer than the 5 minutes I allowed here. You might want to go back and play around with that a little bit and just say, hey, let me test this out a little bit more, make sure I'm drilling down to what I think it's a hypothesis, right? I think this might be the reason for my problem. And then you can attack that and see if you can move the needle with it. All right, the step number 2 was, okay, so I got a problem now, and there's a tool for that, as Rick says in my campaign for a T-shirt. And so that brings us to another poll. So, how many of you are thinking now that you've done a little bit of root cause analysis, or you've already had a problem? I'd like to know kind of where you are do you have a tool in mind, right? Is something coming to mind?
Break the polls up, and also some people, Rachel said she chose power of because.
Great. Rachel, boy, the power of pause. All right, so it looks like about 57% are working on a tool to the problem, and 40 some odd percent are getting over the hump, got a pretty good idea, got it narrowed down to some things, and moving forward. Well, one of the things I want to do tonight is, as I said in our learning targets, was to highlight our tools and think about that. And so one of the things I want to attempt to do here is talk about the suite. And we pulled a little bit of the demographics, again, trying to get an understanding of, where people might be as we were planning our design and thinking about our session this evening. We wanted to try to, we want to be responsive to your needs. And one of the ways we were trying to gather that information is just to kind of look at how much time you had to look into the suite. And by and large, you've been into it some, but not a lot. And so I wanted to come back to that and remind us of some of the resources that you have. And so if you'll bear with me here just a minute, I'm going to I want to pull that up. You have a couple of things that are also very cool. Is you have some restricted resources, I think, that Johnny and the team gave you in the last day or two, that has some PDFs of the tools involved, but also your suite is just loaded with some really good things. And I just wanted to bring you back to the suite and think about that a little bit. One of the things that you have here, and this is always on the first page, is your instructional best bet. So this is step number 2. I need a tool to solve my problem. And so the example we used in our on-site training was this idea of single sentence summaries. And that's the young woman's example that we've been using. But just to remind you what this is, right? Here's a list of best bet tools. I mean, these tools will solve a variety of the problems of practice that you had. And then just watching it scroll through on the chat, as I said, I think we're in a sweet spot with that. This will really help most of your problems of practice. But as a resource here, the first thing is of course the tool, and then it lets you know if it's in text, or if it's in text and video, or if it's just in video. And in this case, single sentence summaries, there's there's some text there, and also in video format. It gives you a little overview of the purpose. Here's what this is. So you're thinking about your problem, you could look through these purposes, right, and say, oh, that fits my purpose. That's what I need. Here's a little bit of research just to kind of give you, some clarity about that. It might not necessarily attach to your exact problem, and that's okay. The point we're trying to show is that single sentence summaries is a research-based strategy. The state would recognize that as, yes, that is a good move for a teacher to help kids increase engagement and make meaning. So it's an important tool. And we give you the tool book. If you happen to have possession of the tool book, you have your restricted resources, which has that PDF that comes out of the tool book also in your possession. So you basically have that part of the tool book. And so this is very valuable to you as you go through this thing and start looking at your stuff. And I said I would try to share a tool or two off this list tonight, just to give you a little bit of taste. We're not going to go through the whole tool, of course, but just a little taste of, wow, what's that about? And so we'll do that. Also wanted to point out here in module 1 that you have this planning form, and that's the same planning form that Johnny has put in your materials. And in this case, he's put can you see my screen, Johnny?
Yeah, we can see your screen, but it is
Is it
on
actually, are we in the
the
module? Can you see the module?
it's on the module 2 slide that shows the percentages. No, it's not showing the online module.
Oh, okay, let's get this right. It just occurred to me, maybe nobody's seeing the screen here.
And Rick, while you're getting that, I shared from our kickoff, there was a login spreadsheet that if you haven't got back into the online modules, that can help you get your link to get back into that. And then also reach out to us if you're having trouble accessing. We can get folks there at Thoughtful Classroom to help us with that as well. You can reach out to me.
Perfect. Thank you, Johnny.
And then Rick, something that was in text earlier that I'll bring up for our Pike County folks, you guys are focused heavily on Kagan. And so when you're thinking about tools, certainly you can do things here with Thoughtful Classroom, but if you are focused heavily on Kagan, it may make more sense for you guys as teams and also individuals to think about the Kagan tools and how that might affect your problem practice in your classroom.
So
I had a quick question on that. Since you mentioned it on Kagan, if we're using it, should we pick like a specific structure to focus on in our research to see how that one structure impacts our classroom, instead of just saying Kagan structures in general?
Yes,
I think
again,
Rick,
you're back to
something specific,
my
isn't
question.
it?
You're taking that, Johnny.
Yeah, I was just going to say, trying to get it honed down to kind of like what we were doing with the problem of practice, and then thinking about the whys. You want to try to hone that down the best you can, right, Rick, to be able to take next steps with it.
Yeah, because you're trying to test a certain variable. If you think about our hypothesis slide earlier and our independent and dependent variables, you want to, if you test a variable, then you know whether that's you've made changes. If it's so broad, you might not know what you're fixing, right, or what you're trying to fix. So, yeah, narrowing it down, I think, is you're right on track with that. What you're thinking is narrowing it down.
And something else that, the guys at Thoughtful Classroom, Rick and Harvey and Kim and all the folks, Matthew or Matt, the online modules, I think, is this correct to say, Rick, that they're, best bets? And so they've tried to look and pick out some tools that they consider to be best bets. And so it can be a great place to look for tools that of common problems you may be having, but it doesn't mean that you have to stay there. You can go out to even the greater number of tools that are within the books and resources you already have. Yeah. Or things
100%.
outside of that completely.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Can you see the instructional best bets on my screen now?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. I was talking all about this and I didn't have it up. So I apologize for that. So this is the opening screen on both modules. And what I was saying about, you have the tool and then you have the purpose statement. So you take your problem and say, okay, so let me read about each one of these, dozen tools and see which one fits my problem. And as I said before, I saw a lot of the problems being listed in the chat that I could go right through here and find a tool that would really help you attack that problem. And so that's sort of your next step from problem to tool. It's there. And as I said, and as Johnny just said, if you might have a situation where, there's another tool that would work with that. And that's something that when we have the coaching sessions, you might say, Rick, I need to think about this a minute. Kim, you have a question?
Yeah. So thinking around that, because when I think of Kagan, I think of an engagement structure. So when you said that about the tool, so if you were thinking about that we need students to collaborate so they could think together, then we could say using, for instance, the 4-2-1 or 3-2, I can't remember the number now, on the summary, or even using the vocabulary, because I saw several people mention the vocabulary thing. So to me, when I see it, so Kagan would be the structure and how you physically would do it in the classroom. But then the tool, if I'm asking this question correctly, would be what you would physically use out of the book, right?
Yeah, the tool would be your action, right? The tool would be, here's how I'm going to focus on that problem. I'm going to solve that problem using this tool. Yeah. So you're taking a Kagan principle, right? Kagan principle is, whatever you're thinking about. And then, so here's a tool that would work on helping kids to get better at that particular thing. Like, if, you mentioned vocabulary, right? Vocabulary knowledge rating. So we want to work on student vocabulary. A VKR might be just the perfect tool to help me work on that problem or practice around Kagan strategy needs. Yeah, that makes sense, Kim?
Yeah, I had to hurry and mute. I mean, I understood it. I think I was just trying to maybe help some other teachers think around it, because I think when, to me, Kagan is like I said, is the how in the classroom, is the collaboration and engagement component. But if you're working with fluency and reading or whatever it may be, then that's where you're going to actually pull in that tool.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Kim. I mean, we're the how people, right? How do you put research into action? And that's a great example. Kagan says we should do this. How do we do it? You find the tool to drive it. Yep. Perfect. Thank you for sharing that, Kim. That helped clear some things up. Other questions about the best bet tools before we wrap this up tonight? You have all the resources. You have the print copies, you have the videos, which are fantastic. If I Now, Johnny, help me if I switch gears here and make sure I don't lose people. I'm switching now to the module number 2.
Yeah, it's coming through, Rick. And just to tell folks before you start logging off, because Rick will be wrapping up soon, is I want to just end quickly with you big picture ideas, some kind of goal dates and things that may also help you too.
So in module 2 is where actually all these video versions of the tools are. And so you can go to the menu, you can go to that overall overview page we were just looking at and say, I'm kind of interested in that tool. That seems like I saw several people talking about questioning. I saw a lot of people talking about engagement. Boy, that questioning and style is a huge tool for engagement. As Harvey always says, change the question, you change the thinking. There's a lot of power in asking questions in certain ways, certain styles, we call it. And so it's a great engagement tool. So if you're looking for, I'm trying to get kids to be more engaged, sometimes finding the right question sparks people into action. So check that out for sure. But anyway, so let's play with that, questioning and style. So I can click on that. And so I have a video tutorial. It's 13 minutes, going to tell me all about the tool questioning and style. And then I can go here and find a PDF, and you can read all about, see some examples, and also teacher tests. But pay attention to this page right here. Man, I love this page out of questioning and style, because it gives me some stems on how to ask questions in different ways to engage different learners. Some kids like to think outside the box. They like to hypothesize, to, come up with a different solution. Other people just like to really dig in and reason it out. They want to compare and contrast and really analyze it. And so when you ask an analyzing question, they're all about it. Like, ooh, I'm into that. And when you ask a question that asks a kid to, think about a different way of doing it. What's an alternative way? What's something out of the box? Woo! I'm fired up about thinking about stuff in an out of box way. And so this is how asking a question in a different style can engage different learners. I used to teach this tool to all of our new teachers and all of our substitute teachers, a couple of things I was in charge of at the district level, among other hats that I wore. And I always had them walk away from the training with 4 questions, one from each style, in their back pocket, and then encourage them to keep adding to your list, keep adding to your tool belt of questions, so that when you're substitute teaching, for example, you're not just asking, what if questions, yes, no questions. You can ask questions in different ways and elicit responses from kids you never heard from before. And it makes you look really with it if you're a substitute teacher, because you can ask some quality questions that way. Love this page. So check that out for questioning and style. And then there's some planning forms and different kinds of things in your suite to really help you think about, okay, so I'm going to plan my questions out, and we'll see how it makes a difference. And so there's some planning forms here. So many good resources in the online suite. So I just wanted to kind of point that out before we get back to the wrapping up our session here this evening.
And guys, what Rick was just showing is the fillable forms you can download, but it's those PDF forms he was just showing that didn't have a fillable portion that you couldn't download. And so that's the restricted resources. And so that link I sent out to you in email, I believe that was on Monday. And then also I've been giving a link in chat. But that is also in your participant resources folder as well, in a Word document, that link to that.
So I'm going to wrap up here in the next 5 minutes or so, 3 or 4 minutes, and thinking about this step 3. We're actually planning your study. And so if we go back to our teacher and her problem around single sentence summaries and how she could get kids to get the details out of text, then in planning your study, you want to think about, what do you want to test? So what am I going to test? In other words, what's your tool testing, right? So in this case, the teacher wanted to see whether summarizing while reading affects the retention of key ideas. So in your planning of study, what's the purpose? And this is your cause effect frame. If I summarize, then the effect will be retention. So that's the cause effect. Then you can convert your statement into a question. So how will teaching my students to summarize while reading affect their ability to remember key ideas from the text? So this is the first thing you think about in planning your study. You've got your problem, you've drilled through your becauses, you have found a tool, and so now you're just connecting those two things together, right? So here's my problem, and here's what I think that this tool can do, right? I think that if I find the tool to help me summarize, it will help me help students retain the key ideas. And you can flip that around into a question format. How does teaching students summarize help their ability to remember key ideas in the text? And then this question then helps you guide your whole design, because then you have a question, that's the question you seek to answer. So it really clarifies things for you. And then we put this also in your chat box, or excuse me, in your list of materials, because this is an important set of questions to consider. These 5 elements were the last things on our learning targets today. And that is, these are things you'll want to think about in terms of completing your action research plan. And the first thing is, what's the outcome? And how are you going to measure that outcome? How will you measure it? Are you going to do, in the example we had earlier, the teacher picked 3 or 4 kids and used it in all classes, but did the research, on a small group. And so these are the kinds of things you're thinking about, right? So what are you going to measure? You're going to use assessments, you're going to use effort, you're going to use a survey, participation. How are you going to go about measuring it? How long will your study go on? You're going to do it for 9 weeks. You're going to do it for 2 weeks. You're going to use it for just a unit, right? Or a chapter or a week of instruction and an assessment at the end. Who's going to participate? Like we said before, you're going to pick 3 or 4 kids. You're going to do a whole class. You're going to do, a block. I mean, these are decisions to be thinking about. But remember the 3 M's, right? And one of those is manageable. Make sure you keep it manageable. Don't put yourself in a spot where you're trying to measure 150 kids' work. That might be a little overambitious. And then ultimately, how are you going to know if this tool is having an impact? So that's some outcomes. And what would I expect to see if this worked, right? So if research says this, then I should be able to see this, which means kids would be able to do A, B, C, whatever. So keep those 5 elements. And again, we put this slide in your instructional materials, so you had those up close and personal. There are things you need to answer as you go through your tool, and that this is all a part of that form that you have that walks you right through it. So how to collect data was one of the questions that often comes up when we think about this. How would I collect my data? And some of the methods you might consider to collect your data is through observation, right? You can observe attitudes, you can observe behaviors, you can tally participation. And again, you can even create a checklist of look-fors. I'm going to look for these things and I'm going to try to measure them. You can also do student interviews and surveys and reflections. So you can assess students' knowledge, beliefs, opinions. These are ways to do this. You certainly want to probably include some student work, because that's a great way to look at results, right? You can, if you want to look for effort, If you use Effort Tracker, which I'm a huge fan of, Effort Tracker is a tool in there. If you want to work on getting kids to make more effort, to make the connection between work and getting better, that is a perfect tool for that. And so that's an example. And of course, your assessments. You have the assessments, and you can use multiple things. So you don't have to just go with one. Again, thinking about manageability and those kind of things, but you can use more than one way of collecting. In fact, you should have some multiple ways. You might have a test. You're going to have that anyway. You might choose to do some interviews. You might choose to do just some other artifacts or some observations. So a couple of different ways to help you validate your results. And then the last thing is ways to assess the impact. And that was the last of the 5 questions. I want to highlight that today. And so you can compare results between your control group and your treatment group, like the 4 kids versus everybody else, or first period compared to second period, right? So the control group doesn't get the tool. The treatment group, period 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever you want to pick, is the treatment group. They're going to get it. And so that's one way of thinking about how to assess your impact. You can do a single group and compare results before and after using a tool. So you can, pre-assess, post-assess. If you remember the speak up terms, speak up stems model that we looked at earlier, the teacher did some of these things, right? They collected some data over the days before, and then they collected some data afterwards. So they had a before and an after, so they could see what the changes might be. And then here's this one again, surveys and reflections after the fact. And you can ask kids, did we use this tool today? Compare first, describe first, compare second. How did we use that tool today, boys and girls? How did that help you think about it? Did that help you think about that differently and get their opinions about it? This is certainly good ways to also assess the impact of the things that you have. And so just in summary, checking your 3 M's, get feedback on your plan. That's part of our office hours and the work we're doing. We'll be back together next month, and we'll do a session and work on some more things. And put your results in that if-then framework. And so basically, if blank is true, I'd expect that doing this will lead to that. So this is that if-then statement being played out. So you can think about it in this way. If it's true that summarizing, we're using the teacher's idea. If it's true that summarizing while reading facilitates retention, then I expect that using the single sentence summary tool will lead to more better recalled ideas, higher test scores, and positive responses from students. So that's a way of just thinking about your overall plan. If it's true that this is the case, then if I use this single sentence summary, this is what I should see. So you see how that has all the pieces connected together. And that's an idea of how that works. And we'll dig a little deeper and share some things on November the 7th. As always, we're here to support and help you. If you have questions, comments, concerns that are worrying you between here and November the 7th, shoot me an email, send Johnny an email. He'll send me the email. We'll talk it over and we'll help you. We don't want you to feel hung out there and not know what to do. So please let us know. Thank you so much for sticking with us here for 2 hours tonight. And we'll look forward to working with you in the days to come. Thanks,
Yeah,
Johnny.
thank you. Thank you so much, Rick. And just the way Rick described that is we're all here to help you. And actually, even on the session with you today is Miss Mary Belcher, Miss Kim Sargent. They're part of our deeper learning team. You can reach out to me first. You can even do Zoom calls, phone calls, emails. I'll even pull them in to help to come around this for you and help you to kind of solidify as you work through this. Big thing is Rome's not conquered in a day, but we're a lot further down the road right now with this planning tool. And so goal is, and so we're going to, of course, make some ambitious goals at first, but our ultimate goal is December 8th to have that video. And with that video, we'll want you to have a PowerPoint, but that PowerPoint can kind of come naturally out of the planning tool. But then Rick's going to also talk with you on November 7th about creative ways to do videos and to represent data. But all of this is ultimately leading to a final showcase where things are more put together. You've done this and your draft has happened, but November 7th, let's make for yourself an ambitious goal that I'm going to have a draft of these first 3 steps by November 7th. But if that doesn't work, at least try to have it by November 17th. And actually, between that time, during close to those weeks, Rick's going to have some consultation times. And Miss Belcher, if you wouldn't care, put that link up for the consultation scheduling. But those dates are going to be the 10th, the 17th, and also I should have said the 16th first. So the 10th, 16th, and 17th. So those will be 30-minute consultations. You can sign up for more than a 30-minute consultation. You could do back-to-back if you thought you'd need more time. But we thought that the 30 minutes might do some of that or do well for the timing. But so put on your schedule, and go ahead and maybe even schedule some time for that on the 10th, the 16th, and the 17th. And then the 7th, make an ambitious goal. And I'm going to have a draft of this planning tool. Ms. Belcher, if you would put a link in for the draft planning tool. That one's just a little bit different than what we've shared at first, in that it's got some logistical information on the top of it that we really kind of need to know and be able to communicate about your projects. And so Ms. Belcher dropped that just now in the chat. And so ambitious goal, November 7th, November 17th. If I can't make that, I'll spend some time in consultation with Rick if I can work that, but I'll also reach out to Mr. Belcher, Miss Belcher, and Kim. We can always come around you and help with other questions as you're having it. And then if it's things that we think we need to bring Rick on too, we'll reach out to him and he'll be able to help us with that. But then ultimately that December 8th PowerPoint and video. And then a big piece of this is that we be able to give each other feedback. And so there in January, which our next meeting in January, I believe is January 11th, maybe. Yeah, so January 11th, we'll kind of unveil how that feedback process will go, but we'll have you guys review 3 of your peers' projects and give them a little feedback. And so the whole goal of that is to, again, give you opportunities to revise and kind of make your plan better before you actually go and do that for final. And of course, April 26th is what we're working towards for that final showcase. But I hope that just gives you a little idea of a better overview. We've got a little bit of a goal now with a planning tool that is pretty detailed. Don't expect you right now still to feel like, oh, I know everything to do, but I do think that a lot of you are on your way to identifying a problem, and then a lot of you are on your way to finding a tool. But I think a lot of us are trying to find that tool and get that down to that narrow focus that we might need for this. But Rick, do you have anything else to add with that? I mean, does that all make sense?
No, you did a great job. What I am thinking, though, Johnny, is just thinking about the process here. We had, or I planned on, suggested doing the sessions in November, and it might just be very well that people are right now needing help. So maybe it's between here and November. So one, if you maybe we should try to find some available time. I should find some available time in my calendar, evenings or mornings or something around my schedule. It's pretty tight in October, but I really want to be able to help if people need some help between now and then. Just let me I got to get my plan done by the 7th. I need some help thinking about, or by the 17th. And that still fits in our window of coaching. But if you want that sooner than later, maybe we could find some session time for people who, would like to, I'd like to talk about that. So we'll find some times maybe that we can offer for October. Or
Okay.
if you want that, right? If you go, boy, I'd love 30 minutes to just sort of share this, just share my thinking and talk to Rick about it. Let Johnny know, and we'll see what what the need is, and we'll plan for that, because I really want to be able to help you when you need the help. So
And that's great, Rick, and thank you for offering that. And so what we'll do, we've already got the schedule out there for those dates we already said, but then we can also add additional dates to that. And one thing I'm going to do is I'll follow up with kind of an email after a meeting today. It'll be later in the week after we also get recordings that just kind of gives a little overview of all this big picture stuff and what our goals are. And like I said, November 17th is a goal for a draft, but just think, that December 8th is not long around the corner, and Thanksgiving's in between after that November 17th. And so having an ambitious goal like that for that draft, I think is probably a good thing. We'll have you guys be able to upload that to a Google Drive. I'll be sharing that in that email about how to access and things like that. But it'll all come. You just worry about what's your problem of practice, some tools, and trying to get a draft form of this. And the draft doesn't have to be perfect. This is just getting your thoughts down, and then we keep refining it and getting better. Is there any questions too before we go? Okay, and we'll hang on here a little longer too, in case there were to be questions. And we just thank you so much for being here this evening. We're very excited about this. I hope you have a little better idea of where things are going. And Rick, just a fabulous job today, and a gold standard way to approach action research. And you guys are going to do great things with this.
So exciting. Thank you, coaches. Wow, sticking with us tonight. Thank you so much. Holler if we can be of service to you between now and the next time we talk. But I really appreciate you. Thank you, Johnny, Mary, everybody. Just, man, top notch. KVEC is a top notch organization. We appreciate it. And we are honored to be a part.
Well, you're too kind, Rick, but thank you so much. And then Ms. Belcher's also put in the chat, the feedback survey. It is very important you do that for us. It helps with our grant record, and also it helps us to be reactive to the needs that you have, because that's what the feedback survey is all about. If you do need the ELA certificate, it will also automatically email that to you. But thank you. I see several of you with the thank yous, and you're very, very welcome. And we hope that by the end of all this, that you'll be so glad that you were a part of it. You guys have a great night.